Hey everyone, welcome to my talk, which is about Nuxt 3 that is way more than Vue 3 and steroids. I'm Alex, I am a web development consultant, and I'm also a speaker and instructor, as you can see here, so giving talks and workshops every now and then. And I'm also one of the maintainers of Nuxt.js. So yeah, a few things more. I have a Twitter account, so feel free to shoot me a message if something goes wrong, if you don't like stuff, or just have a question. I'm also blogging every now and then, lately not that much, but it will come up soon again. So of course about Vue Nuxt, as you can imagine. And I also have a GitHub account where I can see where I contribute to open source. So yeah, for those of you who don't use Vue, you should give it a try, because I have not heard many people who said, oh, I don't like that, but it's also okay. But for those of you who do, yeah, we really like Vue, of course. We enjoy that it's progressive and lightweight and has a little bit of magic, but not too much, and we understand stuff. And we also like the Vue.js composition API that came with Vue free, right? But when projects grow and grow, sometimes you want to reach out for more than just plain Vue. And this is where Nuxt.js comes in. So in the following talk, we will have a look on Nuxt.js and how it can make our lives easier. So let's get started with what actually Nuxt.js is. So it is a progressive framework, similar to Vue, but it's not a component level framework, more than like a meta or app level framework. It is based on Vue 3 and Vite, so HTML will be blazing fast, don't worry. It's totally, fully, completely written TypeScript, so you have all the IntelliSense you want. You don't have to use TypeScript though, that's also important. And it has performance and lightweightness in mind, so out of the box, it's very well configured. In addition, it's versatile, so we'll come to that a little bit later in the talk, but you can use it for pure SPAs, for static site generation, for server-side rendering of all kinds. So like ISR, ISG, not a problem. And also, you can deploy it almost anywhere. But again, later, more about that. Then, I think that was also a crucial point in which Nuxt 2 wasn't that good at. It is well optimized for cold start and for serverless. So again, deployment is not a big deal, but it's also optimized for being used serverless and on the edge. And very important, because requirements always change, it is very easily extendable, so you can almost do whatever you like with it. You're not like locked in or something. If you don't like configuration, then just throw it out. So yeah, now let's just take a look at the few features that Nuxt provides and that makes my life and hopefully your life soon easier too. So first of all, the folder structure. It's great because when you start, you don't even need one, right? So you can start with just an app.vue, very, very simple. And that means prototype applications will be very fast, but you can upgrade step by step if you like. And if the project grows, you might need a folder for components, obviously. But if you just have a landing page, not necessarily. You maybe want to create own composables, pages, and so on and so on. So Nuxt comes with a directory structure that you can use. You don't have to. You can also rename them if you like. And it's supercharged. So yeah, as I said, you don't need much. That's like a very basic setup for TypeScript, but you can also just start with an app.vue here. So that's also good. But of course, you can use more and more of these folders. And yeah, let's have a look at one of these first, which is the pages folder. So yeah, of course, lots of applications needs routing, right? So if you have a pages folder, then in there you can define your routes, but not like within routes.js or something. You just add .vue files. So if you want an index.vue, well, it will, yeah, if you add it, it will be an index side. Or if you add an about.vue, it will correspond to /about. And if you have like a little bit of history in web development, this might remind you of PHP, but of course in a good way, right? So yeah, it gives us these vibes. Let's say you have a file structure in there, pages folder, then hello.vue /hello, articles, that's a folder. And in there you can, for example, have a dynamic side with dynamic parameters that you write in square brackets, say slug.vue. And Nuxt will generate the routes for you based on the file system. So that's file system based routing. Very easy. You don't have to write any routes anymore, which is great. And even more complex things can be covered. Of course, you can also extend your route to say, okay, I don't want it, let me just define myself. But Nuxt is there to help, and for most projects, that will be. So yeah, you can also use like partial parameters. So if you have like an artist dash, for example, classic, rock, whatever, you can write artist dash and then group in square brackets .vue, and the group part will be dynamic, the artist part will be static. And of course, nesting and stuff is also possible. So great, we defined our dynamic parameters. What's next? Well, we want to use the parameters, obviously. So in the template, for example, we can do that easily by just using $route, as we know, as it also was in Vue 2, or which is in plain Vue 3. So let's say we go into our artist dash and then square brackets group.view. We just write, okay, in H1 with group and then $route params group. Easy, right? And if we open example.com/artist-rock, it will show group rock. If you open artist-classic, it will show classic and so on. You get the point. And of course, sometimes we maybe want to do API calls, not just print it out. So we can use the useRoute composable provided by VueRouter initially. But the good thing is here, you see it's very concise. If you don't use the composition API, which you should do because it's great, then you can also use this.route and so on and so on. But useRoute and the composable is of course recommended. Also, you might see here, that's not that much code. And I didn't abbreviate anything. You can just write it like that. We'll talk about that in a second. First, let's see about navigation. Because if we have sites, we want to navigate between them, right? Go from A to B and from B to A and so on. But we don't use anchor tags. We never did that in Vue 3 and Vue 2 as well, because it's a single page application, at least after the initial request, right? So yeah, we don't use that. We also don't use router link because, well, you see it up here, right? It's in the heading. We use Nuxt link. Nuxt's own component that is basically inheriting from Vue router's router link component, but it will add some extra goodies. For example, smartly prefetching pages when the current site is loaded. So for example, when a link is coming in the viewport of a user, that JavaScript for that site will be prefetched, so the user doesn't have to wait when they're clicking on the site. Better user experience. Of course, again, you can toggle that on and off as you like, per link or also in general. And one nice other thing that's a great developer experience is, well, you all knew that if you use router link quite a bit, it's like, okay, if there's an external link to another page, then we have to use an A tag. Else we should use a router link because it's an internal link. And then usually you build your own component around that, your own app link or whatever to handle these cases. With Nuxt link, it's just built in. You can handle external links the right way again. So you can just specify the path, either it's like an external URL or internal URL, the two prop. You can even enforce external or internal handling. So don't worry about that. It will just work. And yeah, here's a very simple example. Of course, things can get more complicated if you like to and if you have specific needs, but trust me, it will be very simple. Same as when you use Vue, there is also simple. And now we talk about auto imports, because auto imports are another great other feature of Nuxt. So let's take a look at the snippet of the script setup syntax in a component in plain Vue. Okay, let's just take a look, and yeah, you see, okay, we import some stuff because we want to use computed and ref. Then in the next lines, we see, oh, okay, we create an author, we create books, and eventually we say, okay, has published books, a computer property, and we return books.value_length greater than 0. Let's get the same example in Nuxt. And you see it's a little bit shorter. Yeah, because the first line or the second is not necessary. Auto imports are there and they will import ref and computed in this case automatically. So you don't have to import it from Vue anymore. Great, right? And even better, it's completely auto-completed. You have type safety. It will just infer it the right way. Nuxt will handle it for you. And it's not even only for the functions and features of Vue itself. It also works for own composables and components. So let's take a look at composables. Let's say you build one, you create a new folder called composables. That's very important for that. And you create a file, say use API. Actually, in this case, you can name it however you want, because if you export the named export, like you do here in line 1 with export const use API, Nuxt will use this as a name and not the file name. If you have a default export, it will use the file name. Okay, so you built your nice composable, great. Now you want to use it, and maybe you want to use other composables from other libraries too, like Vue.use, which is very popular, obviously. So yeah, how does it look like in plain Vue? Let's take a look. Okay, yeah, we see, of course, we import them from project root composables use API, and maybe we get use mouse from Vue.use core. Okay, nice. But yeah, how does it look on Nuxt? Like that. We can again completely omit the imports. Why? Well, for our customly made composable, Nuxt just infers that, checks the composables, the files, and checks the default or named exports. And then it will be able to auto import that again with full type safety. Great. But what's with the library? Well, you can configure, of course, you have to install Vue first and then add a module to Nuxt.js. And with that module, library authors can also write their own one, like the people from Vue did. We can say, okay, please auto import, if they're used, these composables from there. So again, you have the full TypeScript support, IntelliSense and everything, just because library authors added a module to that, and you have to add it to Nuxt config. Yes, very simple. It's also in the instructions, so that's all you need. And again, everything is also tree shakeable and will be tree shaken. So if you only use mouse, it will only be in there, not all the composables. That would be crazy, right? So yeah, that's good. But now let's take a look at one of the modules. As I said before, Nuxt is very easily extendable, and there are tons of modules out there, quite some good ones, but this one's really special. It's called Nuxt Content, and it will turn Nuxt into some kind of file-based CMS. In the end, you can write your content in Markdown, CSV, JSON, YAML, whatever you like, and commonly it's Markdown, of course. But the good thing is you can query content with like MongoDB syntax, and you have all nice support. For example, the Markdown, you have code highlighting if you want that, and yeah, you can just write it. But there's one more thing. It's called MDC. Maybe reminds a little bit of MDX, but the idea here is you can create some Vue components and then just use them inside your Markdown to make your Markdown more dynamic and to make it more like web-like. But you can still write classic Markdown in there. You can mix it up and even more. So again, this module has so much potential, but we'll take a look at a quick demo, which will show you at least a few things of that. So let's see. I switched to StackBlitz. Again, the link is in the slides or over here. And yeah, okay. You can just set up a very minimal template. You have this Nuxt config TS here, which basically just says, oh, add the Nuxt content module. You have to install it, of course. Then you have your app.vue, which you don't even necessarily need. It just renders a page. And then in pages, you have a catch all page that's in square brackets, ..slug, which basically means catch everything. And the parameters or parameter, the area of parameters is named slug. And then in there is just the content.component from Nuxt content. Okay, so far so good. And now what's new is we have the content folder. And in here we have an index.md. And there you already see, oh, Nuxt content demo. There we go. And if we write something like hello JetBrains JS Day 2022, it will appear. Pretty cool, right? What is if we say, let's do, I don't know, another heading, hey all, will appear too. Oh, and it's even linked. Yeah, that's a good thing. So all the headings will have anchor tags as well. You can, of course, style it as you like and even disable functionalities if you don't like. It's all, again, configurable. But how about let's add a link to the About page. Very classic, to About/About. Okay, great, right? By the way, locally, this is even faster. I'm using StackBlitz here, and that's already at some good speed. Clicking on the link will show, okay, document not found. We could use a not found slot in the content doc, but we don't want that. We will actually create an about.md in the content file folder. And there, oh, yeah, document is empty. True. Let's just write about. And there we go. It's right there. Okay, let's get back home because, well, we want to go back to index page, and that's it. We just created very easily two pages based on Markdown. Great. What else can we do? Well, I said before, we have auto imports of components in Nuxt, and with Nuxt content, it's a little bit different. So you need a content folder so they can be used everywhere. And let's just create a button.vue in here. So it doesn't matter if Pascal case or kebab case. And let's say we have a button, we have a template. Let's do a bit more than a button, okay? Let's create a div. And okay, in here we create a button. All right. And let's create a slot in here that says default content. default content. Okay, let's save that. And let's say, okay, how can we use that? Oh wait, maybe rename this to app button or app button.view. Okay, so here we go. Feeds HMR kicking in. And now what we can do is we can just write app button here, and wow, there it is. It's our app button we just created, right? So that's MDC, what I'm talking about. But now, okay, why did we add the slot? Here comes the nice part. This is the very simple inline syntax. You can just use that in, for example, some text if you like, and will just pop up. If you want to use a component like not inline, you have to use a double colon. And now you can just fill the slot. Hey all. And the best thing is Markdown. You can use actual Markdown as the slot content of your Vue components. And that's not even it. You can do way more. You can apply classes. So for example, let's say .nice is a class. And in here, let's style that quickly. Make it maybe scoped and say .nice is border 1 pixel solid red. Great. Oh, whoop, there we go. Probably have to restart it quickly, but it is nice. Let's go back to index. Okay, that worked fine. You can add a class as well. And you can also add properties. You don't even necessarily need to use slots. You can even use properties as well. So you can pass in props. You can even nest components through MDC. So basically almost everything is possible. And yeah, Nuxt content gives you all the opportunities there to build your website based on Markdown and Vue components. Again, this is a very, very small excerpt. We don't have time for that much else, but I really recommend you to check out the docs. I'll also link them. And yeah, it will work pretty well. Okay, let's take a look at the next part, which is Nitro or Nitro Pack for the long version. And Nitro is Nuxt server engine. It got completely newly built for Nuxt 3. It's also usable with Nuxt 2 though. But the idea is you can add something for the backend part to add like endpoints and middleware that are in the end evaluated on the server side. The good thing is it's powered by H3 under the hood. If you don't know what H3 is, it's another HTTP framework. Feel free to check that out. It's in the AnJS repository, which holds all the packages that are used to build Nuxt and so on, but can be used for your own project too. So also Nitro, you can use Nitro without Nuxt if you like to. The idea here is, yeah, it's possible. Like it's responsible for the deployments and responsible for example, endpoints. So, okay, how we do that? Well, again, another folder. This time it's the server folder, and in there you just create an API endpoint. So server API, and then, for example, say my endpoint.ts, and then you have a default export. You need to wrap it in define event handler, which you again don't need to import because of auto imports. And in there, you can, for example, use the event and say, oh, what is the request URL, request method, whatever. And then you can return stuff. You can return stuff as data like JSON, text, whatever you like. And if you define it like that, here in the example, you can just go to the endpoint and access it. And that's it. Or you can, for example, fetch it through $fetch, which is a node fetch, not a replacement or drop in, but like an enhanced version around it, based on omyfetch, again, from the AnJS repository. So yeah, you can fetch the endpoint. And here is something very special again, because Nuxt and Nitro can be used separately. Like you don't have to use necessarily like Nitro with Nuxt, but they still form a unit. Because if you write that right here in your VS Code, for example, or in your WebStorm, then you have TypeScript IntelliSense for the endpoint. So it will be inferred that there can only be data giving this exactly to back here in line 3. If you use, for example, something else and write it on TypeScript, you will get inference. And like Nuxt will definitely know what the result will be. So that's a very special connection between Nuxt and Nitro there. Again, you can basically use whatever you like in Nitro. You can read files from the server, you can proxy calls, you can do health checks, you can write your whole logic in there. So yeah, sky's the limit. And that's a good thing. With Nitro, you have all the opportunities. And because it's also responsible for deployment, these functions or these server-side endpoints, they will work on all platforms where you can deploy to. But deployment, again, a little bit. First, about rendering modes. So rendering modes is always like a little bit complicated topic, because if you use Vue, it's like, okay, so SPA, maybe pre-rendering, that's it. But there's way more. So with Nuxt, you can switch between client-side rendering, which is just a pure old SPA, and server-side rendering through config. You can just toggle SSR true or false. True is the default in the Nuxt config, and that's it. So this is very simple. Oops, sorry. This is very simple. But there's way more. Then you can choose if you want to have pre-rendering, so pre-render statically all your sites during build time by using Nuxt generate, or if you want to build a server that can handle all requests, so server-side rendering, like dynamic server-side rendering, then you choose Nuxt build. Very easy again, right? And now there's the clue. Nuxt also supports hybrid rendering through route rules. I will show you in a bit how it looks like. So you can mix up, like, okay, can you pre-render these sites? Can you maybe on the fly render always these results from these API endpoints? Or can you like don't render these with server-side rendering at all, just put it out static like or SPA like? Can we like incrementally generate things on demand or also regenerate them? This all works. And this all works for all routes if you configure that. And here's the example. So in Nuxt config, you can define route rules. And you can, for example, say, hey, look, in all my blog subroutes, I want stay and revalidate. So have the content, please revalidate that and replace it after however long you define it. Easy. Or all articles. Articles should be static. That means they will be built on demand, but they won't change. This will stay as it is. So basically like pre-rendering, but on demand. That's why it's called static. Then you can also set headers through route rules. For example, for all assets, which are usually under underscore Nuxt, you can say, oh, cache control as max age should be 0. Easy. And as I said before, you can disable server-side rendering. For example, you have an admin panel on the same application and you don't need that, then just say, hey, I don't need to pre-render that or to render it by the server because it's an admin panel. It's not important for SEO. It's not important for metrics. It's maybe just for me to manage my blog. And yeah, there are even more opportunities to like redirect some routes or to enable cores or whatnot. So again, sky's the limit. But as I said, it's an experimental feature. It works with some platforms, and we're trying to improve the availability more and more. Talking about platforms, the last big point is deployment. And deployment works seamlessly on over 10 plus platforms, so more than 10. One of them is very popular, actually more than one is very popular, but the good thing is it's from Node.js support over Versa, Netlify, and you can even deploy on workers on the edge. The good thing is five of these platforms are zero config, which means you don't have to do anything. For example, I have Versa, Netlify, they work out of the box. You just have to connect your repository like you usually do. They'll recognize, oh, it's Nuxt, great, cool. I will run Nuxt build and spin up the server. Of course, if you want to pre-render everything, then you just have to say, yeah, do Nuxt generate, but that's it. No extra config, no preset choice whatsoever. And as I mentioned, you can just use whichever Nitro preset you want. So a preset is basically based on a platform. So you can say my preset should be Netlify, or Netlify Edge to deploy Edge functions, or Netlify Builder to have on-demand builders, and so on and so on. So lots of platforms are supported with different modes. And in the end, you can always say, hey, pre-render all of these things statically and I'll throw them up on FTP. Or I want to have like a very, very simple Node.js server that people can launch. Same idea, then you use the Node preset and that's it. Should work on Edge, on workers, no big deal. And as I just mentioned, lots of platforms. Dino is coming as well, so work on support for that. And the good thing is like, oh, there's a platform, but I don't know if it's supported. I'm not sure. Well, you can just write your own preset if you feel like. Any platform could be supported. You can use a base preset or use presets from other platforms and expand them. It's not that difficult. That's a good thing. And yeah, worst case, you can always resort back to good old Node.js server. So, lots of info, and I could even give you more. Like, we haven't talked much about Nuxt config, we haven't talked much about runtime config, not at all actually, to basically provide values on runtime, not only in build time, like env variables, but a bit different. Layouts is also a thing Nuxt supports, and also transitions, error handling, not the topic at all. Yeah, transitions, here they are mentioned. Data fetching, how that works in detail. State management with Pinya, also with UseState, for composable. Lots of opportunities. Nuxt plugins and modules, because writing your own module is not that difficult. And way more, way more. So again, there are lots of things to discover. So if you're interested, if that could be a good fit, please give it a try. And again, I mean it. Let me know how you like it. If something doesn't work as expected, please raise an issue or create discussions. We're always happy to help you with that. So let's give a little summary, because I know lots of info in a short time frame. First of all, universal deployment to any platform is made easy, because you only have to change config or the preset. You don't have to touch actual code, which is a great thing. That means you're not locked into any vendor. You can use Nuxt with whichever platform you like. It's not like you're bound to one specific one. Yeah, sensible defaults and great developer experience makes developers happy. I heard it quite often, and I honestly agree. And well, we had a claim on on the first slides, and I think it's true. Nuxt.js is more than just Vue and steroids. It's a progressive app level framework to reduce friction around developing your application. All right, that's it for me. Thanks a lot to my sponsors who, basically give me time to work on open source and also giving talks like that. Thank you for attention. It was a pleasure to talk to you. I'm very curious what questions you bring up in the Q&A in a little bit. And if you wonder where slides and repositories are, they're right there. So feel free to check these out. I'll give you also the link to that in a little bit, and also we'll tweet it out. So feel free to check out the examples. As I said, it's all linked there. And yeah, thanks a lot for having me. And I'm curious about your questions now. Thank you.